What's up, everybody? Welcome to SWAT MMA, where we're smoking weed and we're talking mixed martial arts. This is episode 134. I'm Jarrod, here with Paul.
What up?
Coming to you from Las Vegas, Nevada. Today, we're going to be smoking and talking all about UFC 275, headlined by two title fights. We're going to take a look at BKFC's Fight Night Jackson 2, and we're going to be discussing the results of the Haney versus Kambosos lightweight unification bout in boxing. Before we get to the combat sports, though, you know what time it is. Grab your weed, fire it up, and let's get into the weed of the week.
Smoke weed every day.
Man, we got a couple fine strains today. 3, actually, dude. Well, 4 if you count the Georgia pie we had last week. We still got. What is this we're smoking on right here?
So that is the Double Dream.
Double Dream. I haven't had this before, but looking at this lineage, I like it. It looks like we got Blue Dream crossed with Dream Star.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense with the name. I haven't smoked Dream Star before, but Dream Star is a cross of Blue Dream and Star Dog. So we've got a double cross of the Blue Dream. Star Dog's a great strain. I've smoked the hell out of that shit. Yeah. And Blue Dream, of course, is blueberry and haze. One of the OG strains these days. I fucking just finished up a big ass pile of Blue Dream I had. Any interesting terpenes in this? I didn't look at the terpene profile.
Not really.
Run of the mill.
Terpenoline.
Terpenoline.
Yeah, and then
That's not what I'm real familiar with, but
some myrcene in there too.
Well, we also got Triangle Mints and some Supernova, aka Chronic. Triangle Mints is Triangle Kush crossed with Animal Mints. Animal Mints is Animal Cookies and Sin's Mint Cookies. Obviously, a bunch of GSC running deep through that.
Yeah.
What's up with this Supernova Chronic shit?
I don't know. It's weird. I was when I looked up Supernova, it was like Supernova, aka Chronic.
Yeah, it had like zero information on the strain.
Yeah.
Then you go look up Chronic. Chronic is Northern Lights, Skunk, and AK-47.
Which is classics.
Dude, yeah.
Classics.
No wonder they call that shit the Chronic.
Yeah.
Why the name change, though?
Yeah, I wonder if there's some kind of licensing. Like maybe they could use Chronic.
Yeah, that shit's weird. Why would you just rename a strain? Like, no, this is Supernova, homie.
That's the same thing as Gorilla Glue, like the GG.
That one I could get a little bit because Gorilla Glue actually got all butthurt about that.
Maybe Dr. Dre owns the fucking the brand Chronic.
Wouldn't that be some shit? Dr. Dre filed trademark on the Chronic. It was like, nah, you can't call that shit Chronic.
You can't shit Chronic. That's my shit.
I mean, I don't have any info on when Chronic, the strain was fucking created, but I mean, Northern Lights, Skunk, and AK-47 are all way early 90s strains or earlier on some of them. So, I mean, I don't think it's anything recent.
Yeah.
Maybe that is the Chronic they was all talking about. It's weird when you come across, like, because that's just a slang term for weed, at least out here on the West. You know, I don't know if that's an East Coast thing too much, but Chronic out here is just like bud and fucking weed and everything else. So it's like naming your weed. What's the weed?
You tried this new strain, it's called weed.
We got a pen here too. What's in the pen today?
It's some live resin. It's raspberry.
A raspberry live resin?
Yeah.
Live resin is interesting because when they make that, if you're listening and you're unaware, they actually take fresh bud and then they freeze it.
Yeah.
And then they do an extraction from there.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit different in the creation. It's usually a lot more flavorful. You get a lot more terpenes in this than you do like traditional waxes or concentrates, which are still heavy on the terpenes, but live resin is supposed to be more flavorful.
A little like thicker too. Like you'll see, like you're so like this, like normal like distillate pens. If you like move them around, like the distillate will move around, but like this one, it's kind of stuck where it's at.
Yeah.
Cause I like yesterday I was like trying to like put it up and down to see like exactly how much of it I'd smoked. Fucking had it on the bar for like an hour and a half and it didn't move. I was like, what the fuck?
You see that? You can get live resin as a sugar.
Oh yeah.
As well. But that's going to be obviously more for dabbing.
Yeah.
You spilling weed? Or you just ashing on the table? What's the problem with this new cover on the table? The ashes just smear into it.
They just keep falling off this joint.
This is pretty good weed, though, man.
Yeah, I like it.
Who's the brand on this? I didn't even see. Canavative.
Canada.
I'm sorry, that's a stupid name. I hate it when they try to take, we'll take cannabis and innovative, and we'll be cannovative. I mean, what's their slogan? Innovative cannabis.
But yeah, I usually like all their strains. Though. It's pretty good.
Actually, I don't know shit about them. I haven't been in the dispensary in quite a long time, and I'm not really up on the brand.
Yeah, they do a lot of I usually get their infused pre-roll 3-pack.
Yeah. Actually, it's not true. I went to a dispensary, I was thinking week before last, and bought a fucking goddamn $55 eighth.
Yeah.
And that was before tax, and it was pure garbage. Like, that was the worst weed I've smoked. Seriously, that was the worst weed I've smoked in like 3 or 4 years. Like, it was fucking goddamn terrible.
Might be the dispensary though, because I get all my shit from Wallflower, and they do everything there usually is pretty fucking good. I've never
This came from Showgrow.
Yeah. See, I don't really haven't gone to Showgrow in a minute since I moved. So like now I live like kind of by the other Wallflower's literally right next to my house. So like, it's just, sometimes it's just easier that way. But they have great stuff there. So.
Shit, I ain't necessarily blaming Showgrow. You sell what you get. I mean, those of you listening that live in other states, like here in Nevada, our weed is prepackaged at dispensaries, which fucking sucks. Like, I moved here from Colorado, and out there, the weed, when you go to the dispensary, the weed's in giant goddamn jars, and then they weigh. You can look at it, they weigh it out in front of you, and they know how to store it. Like, they don't. So when they like buy a pound, maybe they have a few ounces in a jar, and the rest of the pound's sealed up in a goddamn refrigerator. Yeah. You know what I mean? Being stored properly. Or sometimes the freezer if they have fucking large amounts. And then out here, it's like they made this stupid law where everything has to be prepackaged, so the grower has to fucking package up everything from quarters, 8 grams, 2 grams, and a lot of people like the jars, so you wind up with like 2 grams of bud or an eighth of bud that's sitting in a goddamn jar, not really sealed the greatest, sitting on a shelf or whatever for 3-4 months. Like, that's not how you fucking this all fucked up.
Yeah,
it's retarded. And you combine that with some companies like this Mojave that they just, maybe it was a bad batch. I don't know. I don't smoke enough of their shit to know if all their weed is garbage or that was just a bad batch. They decided to take the market anyways. But I don't know. This weed is hella better though. Yeah, way better. Fucking, this is nice and smooth. Tastes pretty good. Fucking. All right. Enough of the weed. Let's talk about some fucking fights, man. We'll start off with the boxing. We're coming off the lightweight unification bout between Devin Haney and George Kambosos that took place in Australia, Kambosos' home country. He winds up losing a unanimous decision. He has a rematch clause if he decides to execute it, which also guarantees that the rematch will be in Australia. Before we dive into the fight itself, let's talk about something that you told me the other day, which I was unaware of, and I think that ties into this rematch clause being in Australia too. Is he got paid for this fight?
Oh yeah, he got paid big time. He got paid $10 million before pay-per-view.
Well, I don't think there might have been pay-per-view in Australia. I don't know how they aired it, but it was ESPN here.
Yeah.
But 10 million is like, congratulations, George Kambosos Jr. That's what you should. That's dope, man. Yeah. That was a major fight. He had 3 of the 4 belts. His legitimacy was unquestionable.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that he got paid. And appears he's smart enough to not only get a rematch clause, which guarantees the second payday, but he somehow managed to get it in his home country again. Yeah. which is pretty dope. Even if he goes out and he loses again, which could be a reality because Haney looked very
Phenomenal. Yeah, he looked phenomenal.
good. I mean, he won. Haney did on scores of 116-12 twice, and then 118-110.
Just it was really just like a master class if you really look at it. He just never let Kambosos get started. You know, he just kept him on the outside, kept him out on that jab, had his good defense, and found all the openings and just picked him apart the whole time.
Yeah, he was out jabbed by quite a lot. I mean, he landed 78 jabs to Kambosos 32, and he threw 333 jabs compared to only 215 for George. I mean, George only landed 15% of his jabs. I mean, Haney didn't do a whole lot better at 23%, but that's about, a quarter of your jabs landing. That's still pretty solid, especially when you're throwing 333 of them.
That kind of goes into what I was saying too, though. Like even when you're not landing some of those jabs, you're keeping your opponent at bay. You're not giving them that, because one thing that Kambosos did real good against when he fought Lopez was when Lopez would get off big shots, he like cut in and threw his big shots and like made him trade with him. You know what I mean? Whereas like Haney was just keeping him on the outside and like, yeah, don't get me wrong, like Kambosos got off some good punches, but like most of the punches he even landed weren't really like significant. You know what I mean, on Kambosos' side. And so yeah, sometimes when you just throw that jab out there, and it's just keeping the angles and keeping the distance from your opponent where they.
Yeah, the jab has got so many different tools in boxing, especially when you compare it to MMA, where it's definitely underutilized in mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does a lot more than just score points or score punches. It sets up things. Like you said, it keeps your opponent at bay. It disrupts timing.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly important punch for being such a simple punch.
Yeah.
To like layman eyes.
Yeah.
And that was really the difference, I think, in this fight. Because of what you just illustrated that Haney did, George was never able to get set, like you said. And so he came in and he really only attacked with 1 and 2 punch combos at a time, which if you're Haney and you know that it's going to be 2 punches and that's it, it's a lot easier to defend.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot easier to score afterwards on that. And I don't know if it was just an off night for George. I mean, he accepted the fight or the loss like a man. He said he just wants to fight the best. Because, he didn't have to take this fight.
No.
Like, he specifically sought out the toughest fight that he could. He was scheduled to fight Lomachenko before the war. He went to the Tank Davis fight. He was cage side for that, and then cage side for Haney. Like, he could have fought some bullshit thing, done a victory lap, did some fucking mandatory for one of them. That he could have won. Instead, he wanted to fight the best dudes, and I respect that.
Well, and here's the thing too: is I do think last week we talked about how he was always smaller, not smaller, but that Haney was smaller than Kambosos. But in the ring, even though Kambosos missed weight, like I thought Haney looked a lot bigger than him. Like his overall body style. He used his size a lot better than Kambosos is able to. And they looked very similar in size, but just like his shoulders and his the whole his frame was just a lot bigger than Kambosos, I thought.
Yeah, I thought you were right as well. I agree with that.
But yeah, interesting point though is George came in and missed weight.
Yeah, it took him 2 tries to make weight,
which I thought was interesting because he had talked about on Joe Rogan's podcast how he doesn't cut much weight at all.
Kambosos admitted that, this timing was much better, Haney's, and that he could never get into it. It'll be interesting to see. I'm positive he's going to execute the rematch clause. It's his right. It makes sense financially.
Does it have to be immediate, though?
I don't know. Yeah. It might not be, but
because if it doesn't have to be immediate, I would go back to the shed and put together a game plan before I take that rematch.
He did say he was going to, get with his team and figure out a better game plan.
Mm-hmm.
Which
that was a wipe, honestly.
It was.
It was like a masterclass by Devin Haney, and it really made me question who else Haney could really, who's really gonna be able to dethrone him. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of good fighters in this division, like Tank, and we got all the different guys that are like coming up. As far as Lomachenko's still in the picture, and like although he says he's moving up, who knows? Lopez could also be in the picture for a guy like Haney. So I'm very curious to see how he matches up with a lot of these other top guys as well. Even Ryan Garcia is waiting in the wings too. Like there's a lot of good guys at the top of this lightweight division, which is why I feel like Kambosos is going to be real pressured to go for the rematch right away. Because if he's not first in line, there's so many guys that are in line right now that could be potential almost super fights for Haney. Like a Ryan Garcia versus Devin Haney fight gets Devin Haney paid way more than a rematch versus Kambosos does. I would think.
Well, here's the exact quotes from both Haney and Kambosos on the rematch. He said, of course, his contract is guaranteed another fight with Haney in his home country, but it doesn't say if it's immediate. And Kambosos says, yes, 100% we'll do it again. When asked if he had exercised his rematch clause, look, I gave him the shot. If I hadn't given him this shot, he wouldn't have had his moment right now. He grabbed and held a lot and did what he had to do to win. I don't know if I agree with that. That's what it's about. You do what you have to do to win. And today they gave him the decision. I'm sure it will change when we meet and get it on again. This is going to make me hungrier. Said Haney, I'm not ducking or dodging nobody. If it makes sense, if the network wants it, I'll do it again, but it has to make sense. Well, it'll make sense if you're contracted to do it. You don't have a whole lot of a choice. So we'll see how that plays out. Overall, great fight, though.
But that also kind of brings in that same situation we had like with Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. Well, you think that because like I was just talking about all those like big guys who are also could be like super fights for Haney. Yeah. Do you see a situation where they would pay Kambosos step aside money to get like a Ryan Garcia fight, or for him to fight Tank, or for him to, those would be like considered super fights at those like, not necessarily, but you know what I'm saying.
I think it would be. I think it's likely that his rematch clause guarantees him a purse similar.
Yeah.
So it'd have to be a hell of a step aside payment. And he would probably want a guaranteed shot at the winner if Haney were to lose, and that might throw a wrench into things because Haney might want an immediate rematch with you know how this shit fucking goes.
Yeah.
That could get into a lot of shit, but it could happen.
Because there's just a lot of these guys who just like they were talking about before, like Tank just won.
Mm-hmm.
Now Haney's where he's at. Garcia is fighting in a couple weeks. Like everybody's fighting, so it's like everybody's chomping at the bit to see like fight each other. I feel like right now.
Personally, I think we're going to get this fight again within 6 months.
Think so?
Yeah. Then after that, especially if Haney emerges victorious again, by then something else will have happened with all these guys you've mentioned as well, and I think we're in for a super fight again, so to speak.
Yeah.
Afterwards. I feel it. Well, let's dive into the upcoming UFC card.
Well, first let's talk about the BKFC.
You want to do BKFC actually first? Yeah, I was going to say that for last, so we can do BKFC first. There's not a whole lot to discuss on the BKFC card, but there's a few interesting fights, especially if you look at the title fight, or not the title fight, I'm sorry, it's headlined. This is it's on June 11th. It's BKFC Fight Night Jackson 2. It's Belcher versus Tate at heavyweight. We've got former UFC fighter Alan Belcher, who's now 2-0 in BKFC. So this is his third fight at heavyweight. He's fighting Frank Tate, who is 2-1-1. Fairly important fight in their heavyweight division. They're looking for more contenders. Obviously, it's still a young sport here. Alan is he's actually looking pretty good here in BKFC. I mean, he's got a big win over Bobo O'Bannon, who's pretty well respected. I mean, he had that win over Tony Lopez at BKFC 20 as well. Interesting, he fought on the last BKFC Jackson card as well. I'm not sure, maybe he's from there. I don't have enough information on Alan to know that. You know what I always remembered about him in the UFC?
What's that?
Is like, because obviously you know me, like I fucking love Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
Like, he is a relative of mine, albeit, you know, distant, but still. And like that dude, Alan Belcher, has the absolute worst Johnny Cash tattoo in the world.
Bad?
Like, have you seen like the portrait he has on his shoulder is supposed to be Johnny Cash? Like, you've probably seen it and didn't know. You were just like, oh, it must be like his dad or somebody. Like, no, it's supposed to be Johnny Cash, dog. It's pretty brutal. Like, it's like when you get a bad tattoo and it's that big and it's of a fucking famous figure, it's like,
It's the first thing that comes up when you Google his name.
Is this tattoo?
Alan Belcher tattoo.
Yeah, it's brutal, dude. People might be trying to figure out who the fuck it is. Like, who's that on Alan Belcher's arm? Well, that's supposed to be Johnny, bro.
Pretty rough.
Yeah. When you see it really.
Yeah, it's not very great.
Oh my god, look at, dude, not very great. Can you zoom in on that shit, dog?
Looks like a pumpkin.
That looks like a, look at that thing, dude. What is that? Oh my god, it's even worse than I remembered. Oh, that's so bad.
That's pretty rough, yeah.
That's so bad. Yeah, anybody listening, I encourage you to Google Alan Belcher tattoo. And yeah, that's supposed to be Johnny, everybody. But he's fighting Frank Tate, not to be confused with champ Lorenz Tate, who is a little bit below them in what is he, the cruiserweight champion? They have a 200-pound class as well, which they don't call light heavyweight.
I don't necessarily know.
Cruiserweight. Then their light heavyweight is more like boxing.
Yeah.
But anyways, Frank Tate is 2-1-1, so this will be his 5th BKFC fight. And he's got a win over Joey Beltran. He's got a win over Josh Burns, and he lost to Dylan Kleckler in his debut. So he must have a fight in another.
So this is definitely a title eliminator, though. So you got the number 1 guy, heavyweight, taking on a guy who's coming off a win over the former champ. So this has got to be some big implications as far as what happens after this for both these guys.
Yeah, that win over Joey Beltran, I believe, was Beltran's first fight after losing the title, which he defended a few times. And now, you know, to go out, so that carries a lot of fucking weight.
Absolutely.
I mean, so, yeah, I definitely see this as a title eliminator. You know, Frank Tate's getting up there, too. He's 46 years old, but
here's the thing: is BKFC is a bit of a older men's game sometimes.
Yeah, Alan's 38, but again, these are heavyweights too. I mean, it's not uncommon to see guys in their 40s in MMA. You know, so it's not like egregious, like Holyfield boxing type of deal or anything.
Yeah.
We've got a co-main event here at lightweight, which is pretty interesting. We have got Martin Trey Brown is fighting, and he just fought back in February of this year at the Knucklemania 2 event. He's a guy that lost to Louis Palomino. So he's coming off a title fight here. Now he's fighting Robbie Peralta, who is, but I know that name. Like, he's 0-0 in the UFC. I feel like he's a UFC fighter, Robbie Peralta.
I don't think so.
He does have one BKFC fight. It shows his record as 0-0, but then they show him having a win over Pete Pettis at BKFC Tampa at December 9 in 2021. Maybe that's just where I know him from. And the 0-0 must be a mistake on his record.
Yeah.
I watched that BKFC Tampa event, so that's what it is.
I got you. Yeah, it's a pretty tough first fight, or second fight, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also a solid light heavyweight fight here between this dude, Quentin Henry. He's always fun to watch, dude. Quentin Henry's good. He's 4-1 in BKFC, which is a goddamn solid record in bare knuckle. Sure. And he's an entertaining dude. He always comes out and interesting. He's fun on the mic. Mm-hmm. And he's ranked number 2. This is their cruiserweight division. So that is, again, their weight classes are a little bit weird. But he's fighting Sawyer Dupree, or DP. Must be Sawyer DP. I just misread it.
Yeah.
But he's 2-1. He has a win over Will Dunkel, lost to Yuli Diaz.
No slouch.
No, absolutely not. And win in his debut over James Dennis. So I like that we're getting more and more fights on the upper echelon of these cards that are amongst experienced fighters. Because if you, as a fan, our listeners here, if you're unfamiliar with BKFC, the most important thing that I think that Paul and I both agree on when it comes to success in bare knuckle, at least in BKFC, is experience, because it's so different than what everybody's doing.
Your experience, you have a step up on everybody.
Yeah, so even if you're you have 3 or 4 fights in the organization, you have a lot better understanding than the vast majority of these guys coming in, which we still get a lot of new fighters in there. Like, it's an evolving sport. These guys are trying new styles, they're trying new strategies.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. We've seen all sorts of things from we've seen fighters using their, their forearms to block punches. We've seen fighters try to knock punches down with almost like a hammer blow kind of thing as defense. Yeah. There's all sorts of shit that's going on. Some is good, some isn't, but it makes the sport fun, and that experience plays a big deal.
Yeah.
So we've got a slew of other fights on this BKFC card that we won't necessarily go through here. These are always solid.
Yeah,
I recommend anybody listening. It's friggin' $5-6 a month, and you get at least one event plus access to all of their library.
Yep.
And sometimes you get 2 events in a month every once in a while too. It's probably the best deal in combat sports.
Yeah.
I gotta say, with the problems that Triller has been having lately with their Triad Combat, for instance, they have an event coming up. You can't buy tickets for it.
I don't think it's happening.
I mean, they have an event you can't buy tickets for. It's in a week or some shit now, and you call the event center and they're like, yeah, no comment. And Triller's like, no comment. They've canceled things. They seem to be a hot mess. But BKFC, they do seem to be doing what they were saying, which is leaving the fucking BKFC alone.
Yeah, I feel it.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Because Triller's a shit show. But if they still have some money set aside for these guys, good.
Yeah.
Because their website's a lot better. Their website was garbage 6 months ago.
Now.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's necessarily that Triller money, but maybe it is.
It's just more legitimacy, I feel.
Yeah. Enable them to make some improvements here.
Yeah.
And let's hope that it continues despite Triller's craziness.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into UFC 275.
Yeah, that's the last real big combat sports going on this week.
Taking place at Singapore Indoor Stadium.
Dude, it's a good card, thank God, because these past few fight nights have been horrible. I didn't watch them. I'm not going to pretend that I watched the one that happened this past weekend with Rosenstruck versus...
watched some of it, but it was...
Who was it? Volkov?
Yeah.
Volkov got that first round TKO.
It was pretty nice. It was pretty nice couple shots he hit him with. He hit him with a few hooks, knocked his mouthpiece out, and Herb was trying to step in and let him put his mouthpiece in, but he was also getting fucking blasted, so he just called it.
Yeah, I saw there was a little controversy about the stoppage, but when I looked at it, when it was slowed down a little bit, it was pretty oh boy, that's fucked up.
Yeah, he got up 2 seconds later, but it was also because he got punched and dropped, and that's one thing about the UFC that's different. Is if you get flash KO'd, sometimes you're gonna get waved off, not because necessarily you're KO'd, but they're there to protect you. And when you get flash knocked down and it looks like you're out, it's better to be early than be late. You know
yeah, for sure. Well, back to this card, which is got solid title fights at the top. I mean, we've got the main event between Glover Teixeira, current light heavyweight champion, versus who's he fighting?
Jiří Procházka.
Jiří Procházka, who's the former Rizen Lt Heavyweight champion, I do believe, correct?
Yeah.
He's a bit of a beast.
Yeah.
He's
gonna be hard.
It's a little unknown.
Hard to watch.
It could be. We've also got a women's strawweight rematch between the former champ Wiley Zhang and Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and then of course in the co-main we've got the flyweight championship bout between Valentina Shevchenko and Taila Santos. I'm always excited to see Shevchenko.
Yep.
Santos is 19-1. Could be very interesting bout.
Santos is pretty good. I mean, she's good. The only problem with this whole division, well, let's just start with that one because I feel like it's the least we're gonna like have to dive into.
We did have another exciting fight on the card, which was Robert Whitaker versus Marvin Vittori, but that got removed from this card due to, I believe, an injury by Whitaker, and then it's rescheduled for a later UFC pay-per-view. So we will get the fight, just not on this card. Still remains strong though, with the top 3 bouts being what they are.
But yeah, I think we should just start with the co-main event because that one's kind of where we'll get the, you know.
Yeah, I mean, look,
it's Valentina Shevchenko, you know,
and Valentina Shevchenko. I mean, we're at this point where it's basically, how can we pick against her until she starts showing either a decline or mistakes, or
someone just lights
night.
the whole division up like she did, like leading into a fight against her. Like, you know what I mean?
If she is sharp and she is taking it serious, which
she never isn't.
She's never shown us that she doesn't take any of these things extremely serious. She's most likely going to get the victory here.
And here's the problem. It's not that I don't think Taila Santos is extremely talented, because I do. She is, I think, better than most of the division. Like, there's not very many fights I would pick against her in. But the only problem is I feel that in this division you don't really get that much time to mature or get tested that would ready for you for a fight like Valentina. You know what I mean? Like, there's no fight in the division where I'd go, okay, so that's the pathway to fighting Valentina, and that will get this fighter A, B, or C ready to fight someone like Valentina.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She's just so head and shoulders above, I feel, everybody else, that there's the talent gap is just,
it's nearly a foregone conclusion. But I still get excited every time that she fights, because I mean, there's a difference between her and, let's just talk about Amanda Nunes. I know Pena is currently the champ, but Amanda had the reputation.
Yeah.
And, it was often a toss-up between her and Shevchenko. I just think that Shevchenko I think she's a lot more skilled than Amanda was. And I don't mean to slight Amanda. Amanda was powerful. She was strong. She had fucking big power in her punches. And
but skills-wise,
she was skill level.
I think Valentina's better.
Shevchenko is one of the top fighters.
But if we're talking like Amanda's perfect example of like someone who has like a lot of power that can also do everything else pretty like top notch. You know what I mean? Like, she has pretty top notch like jiu-jitsu and but like her size and power that she carries, I feel like has intimidated and or like, she hasn't gone through like tons of leaps and bounds as far as like her talent over her career, if you really look at it. Like, I feel like earlier in her career she fought that same way even when she had some troubles, but she was just on her way up. Whereas like Valentina, I feel like every single time she fights somebody, she pushes herself to be like better than them at everything they do good. You know what I mean? So like, and also I've gone into this a few times on the podcast, but her training regimen of just like going all over the world and traveling and training with every best camp in the world, I do think sets her apart from a lot of these fighters in her division, in the whole UFC women's division as a whole. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
Because it's not that they're not as talented, but it's just Valentina can give you so many different looks. You know what I mean? She doesn't have to always fight the same ever. She can fight 15 different ways and find a path to victory against you. When you're going in against someone like Amanda, you know what she's going to do to you. She's going to try to walk you down. She's going to hit you with big shots. And if you can take the big shots, she's going to take you down and rain big shots on you and then choke you out or do whatever she's got to do to finish you. Whereas like Valentina's more strategic. You know what I mean? She's going to go in with a game plan and try to like pick you apart at your best game.
Yeah, if you look at Shevchenko's record, I mean, her kickboxing record, she was 57-2, which is very impressive. her Muay Thai, she's got gold medal after gold medal after gold medal. If you look at her her stats there, and now in mixed martial arts, I mean, she has 3 losses, right? She's 22 wins and 3 losses. But if you look at her losses, 2 of those are in the Amanda Nunes fight, which are pretty.
Second one was real questionable.
Yeah, they're questionable.
First one was I had Amanda. Second one I had Valentina winning.
Yeah, and then before that, her only other loss was when she was 7-1 or 7-0. She fought Liz Carmouche at the C3 fights.
Yep.
In 2010, and she lost by a doctor stoppage.
Yeah, because Liz busted her open with an elbow that caused her eye, to start bleeding into her eye, and then they stopped it because it was like a lower level promotion.
Right. I mean, Jesus, dude. Other than that, it ain't nothing but W's for this woman. Dub after dub after dub against. I mean, she's got wins over Young Jacek, the champ below. I mean, she murdered Jessica I. I mean, that fucking high kick to the dome KO was absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. She looks flawless every time she comes out, except one fight she got like taken down, and people were like, "What the fuck?" And then she came right out and fucking. She just came right out and murdered. I mean, she got that win over Liz Carmouche back. Yeah. Back in April or August, I think, of 2019. She's beaten all the top contenders. Now here we go again. There's really no reason, I don't think, why she's not going to beat Santos. Who, like we said, she is 19-1. She's Brazilian. She's 5'6". She's around the same size. She's only a blue belt, though, in jiu-jitsu, which is surprising. She only has 3 subs. She's got 10 knockouts, so she's got some power in her hands.
She's got power.
You know, and she is coming off a victory over Joanna Calder Wood. Yeah. She beat Roxanne Modafferi, Jillian Robertson, Molly McCann. It's not a murderer's row of victories here, but it's nothing to be talk shit on.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Molly this is in July of 2020. Molly's pretty young in the fight game still. But Robertson, Modafferi, and
that'll get you a title shot.
Wood is those are solid victories. So we'll see. But I got Shevchenko.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, how would you not pick against her? Let's talk about. We talked about Young Jacek though. She's fighting Wiley Zhang or Zhang Wiley. I was saying her name backwards. I don't know why. You know, the last time they fought was when Joanna came with that hematoma over the middle, looked like a fucking alien.
Yeah.
I had to hit this bowl of this Georgia pie after picturing that in my head. Do you remember how brutal that was?
Yeah.
I can't even believe she kept fighting. How did they let that fight continue, honestly? With her head looking like that.
Here's the thing is, like, it's just swelling. Like, it really doesn't obstruct you. They're like your
I guess you're
vision,
right.
It doesn't
It's no worse than a cut that might be bleeding a bit.
Yeah, and it didn't obstruct her in any way.
It's just the optics on that.
Yeah.
Like, she seriously looked like a fucking alien, bro.
Yeah.
Rough.
Yeah. And Weili Zhang, too, like, she took just as many shots as Joanna, and her pace was Gucci. She's got a leather face. She took a lot of shots against Joanna. Look, like, don't get me wrong, everyone has their lumps after a 5-round war like that. But in comparison to Joanna, I feel like that's part of what won her that fight. They were like, holy shit, talk about damage. You know what I mean?
She looked real damaged, bro.
Yeah. But it was a great fight the first time. It was honestly, I think, the best women's fight of all time.
It was tremendous.
Their first fight, which is why I think the rematch is going to be hard to live up to those same, you know.
You know, Joanna's been out for a while now. She's been holding out for more money, better contract, and this fight. And she's a workaholic. I think she's been putting in the time in the gym. I don't expect much for ring rust from her. I mean, all those title defenses she had, I expect that work ethic to be what it always was. I don't think she's fallen off on that at all.
Yeah.
But I do feel like she's wanting to make a statement here.
Well, I think a win here would get her the rematch with Carla.
Yeah.
I think the winner of this fight's getting Carla. they're gonna beat the shit out of her.
Yeah, I think so too.
Like, unfortunately, like I don't think she's got anything for Zhang. I really don't think she has anything for Joanna either.
It's not Carla's fault that Rose came out and shit the bed like that. But if that Carla had fought Rose that is like the opposite of the Rose that shit the bed, I don't know if we,
but
she might have got
at the end
smoked.
of the day, MMA is all about matchups, and Carla had the mental edge over her, and
it's a good matchup. Because I think Rose beats both of them. I mean, Rose already has beat both of those two convincingly. Mm-hmm. But that's why MMA math doesn't work. Exactly. I think you're right. I think both of them will fuck up Carla too.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. But I like young Jacek in this fight, and that's probably just a fan pick because I like her as a fighter. I'm a big fan. But
I just can't get that image of Joanna's freaking
the alien
Frankenstein head that she had. That's why I'm taking Zhang Weili. I think is this 3 rounds or 5?
I'm pretty certain this is 3, which is another reason I like young Jacek.
That changes the game a bit. Yeah, I still gotta take Weili.
Young Jacek used to have such high output. I think she'll turn that back on and just
she has to in this fight.
Smack her the fuck on up.
Because honestly, that was the difference in the first fight. And the first fight is Joanna was hitting her with good shots. It was just like in singularity, like, she'd hit her with like a big straight or just like a real like a jab that would like interrupt Zhang Weili. But like Zhang was throwing like 4 or 5 punches at a time, like and hitting Joanna with some of the dirtiest shots I've ever seen.
Absolutely.
That shit was rough.
It was such a good fight, man. When people try to throw out this nonsense that like women's MMA sucks, like part of it I get. It's true. There's a percentage of it that's not as high quality still as a lot of the other MMA. But to act like there is not extremely
high level
women's MMA is a joke. Like, are you fucking kidding me? All of these women we just talked about.
Well, it's just like in the beginning of the UFC. Do the Supernova.
The Supernova. We're gonna fire up the Supernova. People hope you're fucking joining us.
The thing is though, when you look at that, when people say shit like that, it's really like, okay, but you're telling me those guys who were in the original UFC 1 would be able to freaking,
right,
hang with these guys now? That's the same thing.
That's the same shit, yeah.
These ladies, like, it's not their fault. Their natural progression of their sport is happening just like we watch the natural progression of the male division in mixed martial arts. It's that same idea that, remember before how we were talking about everybody was specialists. Right now, that's what you're going through, like in like women's MMA. You had like the specialists who owned the whole division, like they had Ronda, and now you have like the 2 most most well-rounded fighters, or all the most well-rounded fighters are the champions right now if you look at all their divisions. And then so you're just dealing with the natural progression, like the same way as like 15 years ago there wasn't kids growing up training mixed martial arts. You know what I'm saying?
Well, think back, like we had Roxanne Modafferi on the show when she's telling us how, like, even in Japan, which is way more progressive towards fighting than we were here, they're still calling the women's fucking uniforms costumes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's come a long ways, but it still hasn't crossed over that barrier completely. But all of these women that we just mentioned fighting in this, we were talking about Shevchenko a minute ago. We talked about Rose. Her last performance aside, Carla last performance aside, Joanna, Weili Zhang, these are high class fighters.
Yeah.
And they're always putting on entertaining bouts for the most part. And hopefully that anybody that got turned off by that Namajunas Esparza fight still hang out and check out these two, because we've got 2 great women's fights back to back on this card before we get to the main event, which is that's what's next. This fight almost makes me sad. Glover Teixeira versus Jiří. Because that Jiří dude comes out and seems to just be murdering people, bro.
Well, let's just kind of for the people who don't know who he is, let me just take you back. See, this is only his what?
It's only his third
Third
UFC
UFC
bout.
fight,
Dude, but he's
yeah.
a former
So-
Rizen Light Heavyweight, but he fought Volkan no time. Ozdemir turned it
Yeah.
into Volkan at a time. Ozdemir.
Yeah. Just like literally walked in, hands down the entire time, parrying strikes with his hands down, and just pieced Ozdemir up. Just like in
Yeah.
the craziest way.
And then he
was
beat
so
Dominic Reyes for the title shot.
Dominic Reyes, that win over Dominic Reyes was just like, had to be so demoralizing for Reyes, who was just coming off the Jones fight, and he was, he was trying to get back up to the title fight now that, Glover is the champion. Well, not the Jones fight. I'm sorry, the Jan fight.
Right.
And now that Glover is champion, is trying to fight back to that title, and then Procházka just hits him with the nastiest spinning back elbow from hell and flatlines him. Like, it was disgustingly bad.
Yeah, I mean, in those two fights, Yuri's averages just over 7 strikes landed per minute. Okay, compared to just a little over 3 for Glover, and he does that with a 52% striking accuracy, by the way, too, which is
Ridiculous.
Which is fucking solid for UFC when you have those kind of high numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, now he absorbs a lot too. He absorbs almost the same number. Okay, but so does Glover. Glover absorbs a little bit more than he throws too, at 3.83 to 3.72. Yuri's at 6.8. Defense is about 50% for both of them here. Now the grappling is where Glover Teixeira is going to have some advantage here.
Yeah.
At least on paper. He averages a couple takedowns per fight. Yuri averages less than 1, but he's only had 2 fights. We don't really know what he's got there. His takedown defense has been 50-50 for the time that he's been in there. But Glover also averages a submission per bout as well.
Yeah, well, Glover also is obviously going to be better in the jiu-jitsu game here. But here's the thing is that is true about Glover's career on the late side, but the Glover Teixeira that we all learned to know and remember from years past was always known as the guy who would real heavy hands and could put you out.
Yeah, he was a KO. And
I would not be surprised if Glover is willing to stand here with Yuri.
The way Yuri's striking, at least what we've seen so far, it's so unorthodox and unusual. I think that would be a pretty terrible idea for a fundamentally sound striker like Teixeira. Yeah. It's going to be a banger.
Because we watched just a few fights ago, freaking Glover stand with Thiago Santos and then ate his shots, hit him back, and then take him down and fucking put him away.
It's true.
So, I could see a similar situation where Glover stays safe, keeps his defense up, lets Yuri, because here's the thing. Glover's seasoned in this game. He's been in these 5-round fights. I know Yuri was a champion in Rizen, but he has a lot of knockouts on his record. So a lot of his fights are getting finished. So I wonder how he would deal with getting into the deep water of a 4th round where, he's maybe hit Glover with some big shots, but he hasn't gone down and he's winning some of these grappling exchanges.
Yeah, I mean, he has a lot of fights. He's 28-3-1, I do believe. Yeah.
So I really.
But we don't know the quality of these fights. That doesn't really mean shit, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, no offense to Rizen, however you say it.
Yeah.
I mean, they're so fucking lowbrow on a lot of their shit. I don't even know how to properly say their fucking name. I mean, I'm just keeping it real.
Yeah. Well, they're
maybe
they're
he's
like
fighting
the
scrubs over
Bellator
there.
to
They're like the Bellator
FC.
to 1, right?
Yeah.
They're the guys putting on Floyd Mayweather versus Teshin 2, right? That's where that shit came from.
True.
Well, Yuri is a very interesting fighter. I'm excited by this bout. I have to personally, I'm just going with Glover.
I have to go with Yuri. It's his time now. And I'd really like to see Yuri versus Jan. I feel like that would be a dream matchup for me next.
Yeah, that'd be pretty dope. I'm picking Glover less on I'm just picking him out of heart. He's an old dude. He's fucking 43 years old, which is old for a 205-pounder. He's been around forever. I think he's going to retire, win or loss.
Win or loss?
I think so. He might stick around with a win. But you can make the same argument with a loss. We might stick around and get another win, go out on a win. Who knows? I think he's done either way. And I'd like to see him go out on top. It'd be easier for the division if he loses the belt than retires versus retiring with the belt. That always creates a problem with the lineal trajectory of belts, etc.
Yeah.
I do like to see the people get a chance to beat the man, so to speak.
Well, here's the thing. Even if he wins and he walks away, there's really no scenario where I would see like a Glover Teixeira being like, oh, I watched, someone else get the belt back, so now I'm coming back to fight for my belt.
No.
So like even if he were to win and retire, I feel like the whole lineal thing really wouldn't matter because I don't see a situation where he becomes active again, after that.
I don't either. I mean, even if he wins here, what has he got? One more fight? I mean, it's got to be every fight. We've got to be like,
but like who? Like Fayan again? Nah.
This is it. This is it for Glover, and I just want to see him go out with a win.
Yeah,
personally,
I feel it.
All those years he was trying to get in the UFC with the fucking visa shit, working on
win or loss though. He's walking out with a payday. That's all I know.
Yeah, that's good. Good for Glover. It's good top heavy card. I mean, if you look at the rest of the preliminary card, it's pretty terrible.
Yeah,
I don't.
We also
I literally
had
don't know any
4 or 5 fights that were all taken out of this card, and there's some actually better names under the undercard that all had backed out. So I don't know.
Yeah, I look at the rest, even the rest of the main card. I'm not. I mean, I know who Manel Cape is. She's fighting Rogerio Bontorin, Jack Della Maladona versus Ramzan Ameev.
The only one I know is that Jake Matthews is Andre Fiallo.
Yeah, and that's the opener on the ESPN prelims. Early I don't know anybody else on there, but the pay-per-view itself is solid.
Yep.
And let's see if this title changes hands at the end of the fucking week, man.
I wonder what the odds are for Valentina to lose.
Astronomical.
I'm just gonna throw $5.
It's probably plus 1,000 or something.
Just throw $5 on it just cause. $10, $15, something like that. Not that I think Valentina has any chance of losing, but I just always like to do
you never know.
Yeah, I always like to do when there's just astronomical odds, just throw $5-10 at it, with these fights. Cause it's in mixed martial arts, anything can happen. You never know.
Dude, it can, and when you hit on one of those, it makes up for, all those.
When I hit on that,
Valentina's minus 700 right now. Glover's plus 75, plus 165. I mean.
What would Santos do?
I'm pulling this up here. Santos is plus 500. Young Jacek's plus 150. That's a solid bet. Yuri is minus 200. So I wasn't that far off with the fucking plus 1,000 or minus 1,000. I mean, on Shevchenko's minus 700. Shit. Now, for those of you listening, you might not quite understand what we're saying. What that means, let's look at the Shevchenko. It's minus 700. So that means you would bet $700 to win $100. So you bet 700, she wins, you get 800 back. Now Santos is plus 500. So that means you bet 100 to win 500. So you bet 100, you get 600 back.
Yeah.
That's a solid bet, on either one of those low levels. The score, you win, no biggie.
If not, not a big deal either.
What do you think of this Chronic we're smoking, aka Supernova?
I like the taste.
I didn't like it at first at all, but after I got a little bit used to it, it's good. It's pretty smooth.
Yeah,
I don't mind it.
Just tastes. It feels like an old school strain. It's taking me back right now.
Taking you back to the 90s.
No. 2000.
Yeah. That'll be the Chronic 2.
I wasn't even talking about the album. I was talking about the weed.
Shit. Well, that about wraps up the combat sports for this week. There's a bit of boxing, but nothing we're going to dive into right now. And looking forward to that BKFC event. And we're working on some new guests for the show. But that about wraps us for this week.
Yep.
If you're brand new to the show, thank you for listening. Thanks to everybody else. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you're smoking on some delicious herb just like we are. And if you want more information on the show, you can find it everywhere podcasts are distributed, plus YouTube videos. All that info is in one spot.
SWAT MMA.com, or get over there, click the gear button, support the podcast. Then head over to Instagram and follow us at SWAT MMA Podcast.
Later, everybody.
Peace.